Imagine your company receives a CSV file containing 2000 employee records every day, and your task is to insert all of them into a database. A simple approach would be to insert one employee record at a time. Sounds reasonable, right? But what happens when the file contains 20,000 records or even 2 lakh records? Will your application still perform efficiently? Let's say we have a CSV file containing 2000 employee records. If we process these records one by one, the application has to send 2000 separate requests to database. Each request involves network communication, database processing, and response handling. As the number of records grows, these repeated database round trips become increasingly expensive and can negatively impact application performance. This is a common challenge in enterprise applications that frequently handle large-scale data imports. To solve this problem, JDBC provides a feature called batch processing. Instead of sending database queries one by one, we can group multiple queries together and send them to the database as a batch for execution. Think of it like delivering 500 letters in a single trip to the post office instead of making 500 separate trips. In this project, we will read 2000 employee records from a CSV file and insert them into the database using JDBC Batch Processing. We will add 500 records to a batch and execute them together in the database. This means that instead of making 2000 separate database requests, we will execute the records in a few batches. By reducing the number of database interactions, batch processing helps improve efficiency and is commonly used in enterprise applications that handle large volume of data. Let's take a quick look at the overview of the application. We have a CSV file containing 2000 employee records, and we will first create an employee table in MySQL to store those records. Next, we will create an employee class to represent each employee record as a Java object. Then, we will build an employee CSV reader class to read the CSV file and convert all records into a list of employee objects. Finally, we will create a JDBC batch processor class to establish a database connection, read the employee list, and insert the records into the database using JDBC batch processing. I will keep the project and CSV file links in the description so that you can download them. Let's get started. This is our employee records CSV file. A CSV file generally contains comma-separated values. In our CSV file, we have 4 values. First one is ID, and then name, and email, and designation. So each value will be separated by a comma. As you can see, after each value there is comma. So we're gonna read this file in our Java program and convert all these records into employee objects and store them in database using batch processing. To insert employee records from CSV file to database, we need a database table. So I'm gonna create employees database table in MySQL. For this, I'm going to use JDBC schema. Let me write a query to create employees table. In this employees table, I'm going to take 4 values. First one is ID, name, email, and designation. Execute this query. Table is created successfully. In Eclipse IDE, first create a project. Name it as batch processing. In SRC folder, take a package com.batch. In the package, first create an employee class. So the purpose of this employee class is to represent one record from CSV file to one Java employee object. So let's take this employee class as a POSO class. First, I'm gonna create 4 private variables of employee. After creating the variables, create 2 constructors, one with no parameters and another one with all 4 parameters. Now we need to generate getters and setters. These getters and setters help us to set values to these fields in the class and to get the values from these fields. Go to source. This time you have to choose generate setters and getters. Select all of them and click on generate. So now our Pojo class is ready. Employee Pojo class is ready to represent CSV file records into Java based employee objects. Let's understand why we need an employee class. We need an employee class because our main aim is to insert an employee CSV line into the database. The employee details in the CSV file are stored in a single line with comma separated values, whereas database records are stored in table format. So we cannot directly insert data from the CSV file into the database. Therefore, we need a medium between the CSV file and the database. For this reason, we use an employee class which provides setters and getter methods for its variables. First, we separate the values from the CSV line using commas and set them into the employee object using setter methods. Then, we retrieve those values from the employee object using getter methods and set them into the prepared statement. Finally, the prepared statement inserts the employee details into the employee table in the database. So far we have completed 3 steps. First one is our CSV file, second one is creating a employee table in MySQL database, and third step is creating this employee class. And next step, step 4, is to create employee CSV reader class to read CSV file and store them as employee objects. Create the class in com.batch package. Name it as employee CSV reader. Inside this class, I will create a read method which can return list of employees. To handle the exception at method call level, here I will declare a throws exception. As the method return type is list of employees, I will create a list of employee variable. I have created an employee list and I will return it to the method call. We got to import list and array list. At the moment, our employee list is empty. Now we need to write logic to read the CSV file and convert all the lines in the CSV file into employee objects and store them in the employee list. So to do that, our first task is to read the CSV file. I will use file reader to read the CSV file. So let's create file reader class. I have created file reader class, but we have to specify to the file reader from which path we are reading the file. So let's open our files and copy the path of our CSV file. This is my employee records. Right click on the file and copy as path. Go back to application. To the constructor call, paste the path of the file. Here the compiler will assume the backslash is escape sequence and it will accept a special character. We have to pass one more backslash to get rid of the error. So put one more backslash after each backslash in the path. So here file reader is throwing an error. It's not an error, we need to import it. Okay. So now we successfully read the file reader. This file reader object will open a stream between our Java program and our CSV file. But the problem with file reader is it can read only one character at a time. But we need to read one line at a time. Because if you look at our CSV file, so one line represents one employee details and second line represents another employee details. So it is easy to process all these records if we can read one line at a time but not the one character. To read one line at a time, we have to use another class which is buffered reader. So we will create buffered reader and pass the file reader object to the constructor call and pass the file reader object for the method for the constructor call. Import buffered reader. Here it is buffered reader. Now we have created buffered reader. What buffered reader will do? It will read some data from CSV file and wrap it and store it in a buffer memory. And it has a method called readLine which can read one line at a time. Let's have a look at our CSV file again. If you can observe the first line is to explain what kind of data that we have in that particular column, but it is not representing any employee details. So we want to skip this line and we will start processing the employee records from the second line. To skip the first line, just read the first line and do not store it anywhere. By default, buffer reader will have a cursor pointing to the first line. When you read the first line, it will automatically move to the second line. So here I will skip the first line just by reading it. After execution of this line, first line will be read. The cursor will go to the second line. It will point in front of the second line. Now I will use a while loop to read the records from the second line. Here, write while loop. Here in the while loop, we have to check a condition. The condition what I check is, I will read the second line into a string variable and check if string variable is not null, the control will go inside while loop. And if string variable is null, the execution stops. So let's write a condition to check the second line and store that in a string variable. To store that in a string variable, we need a variable first. I will create a string line, and here line is equal to reader.readLine. So don't worry about the errors. What this will do is, because we already read the first line, the cursor will be pointing to the second line now. The second line will be read and it will be stored in the line. Now we will check it whether it is null or not. Okay. So the condition is checked. Now if there is data in the second line, it will be stored in the line as a string variable. Okay. So let's have a look. Have a look at our second line. So this is our second line. This complete line will be stored in string line variable. Okay. We will use split method of a string variable. Okay. So second line will come and stored in the line. So here I will write line dot split using comma. Now this will return an array of strings with 4 values, because we have a total of 4 values: ID, name, email and designation. All those 4 values will be split into substrings and will be returned as a array of string. So I will store that array here, string array values is equal to line.split. Now we have second values divided into a string variables and stored in our values. Here create an employee object. Employee is equal to new employee. I have created an employee object. In employee object, we have a total of 4 variables: ID, name, email and designation. Let's store all the string array values into employee object variables. So how do we store them? By using setter methods. e.setId. In arrays, the indexing will start from 0. So here values 0. So here it is of string type, but in employee class ID is integer. So we have to typecast from string to integer. I will use integer.parseInt. So ID value will be set. After that, set name, and here values of index 1. After this, e.set email. After that, e.set designation. So here simply use the list, employee list dot add. So the first employee record will be converted from CSV file to employee object and it will be added to the list. And after this line, the control will go back. By the time it checks the condition, the cursor will move to third line and it will read the second employee, and like that it will read all 2000 employees and it will store it in the employee list. By the time control will exit the while loop, all the 2000 employee records will be converted into employee objects and it will be stored in the employee list. So here we have to close the reader and save the program. So whenever you call this read method, it will read all the CSV file records and convert them into employee objects and return them as a list of employee. Let's understand the execution flow of the employee CSV reader class read method. First, we create an employee list to store all employee objects converted from the CSV file. Next, we create a file reader object which establishes a connection between the CSV file and the Java program. Since file reader can read only one character at a time, we wrap it with a buffered reader so that we can read one complete line at a time using the read line method, because one line is one employee details. ReadLine method returns one complete line as a string object. By default, the buffered reader cursor starts at the first line, which contains the column headers, and we don't need those values. So we skip this header row by calling readLine method, and one readLine method call will move the cursor forward by one line. Next, we create a string variable called line and use a while loop to process all employee records. During each iteration, readLine reads one employee record and stores it in the line variable. Then we use line.split method. This method split the strings into substrings using delimiter, comma, and return the values as array. After that, we create an employee object and store those array values into employee ID, name, email, and designation. At this point, one employee record from the CSV file has been converted into a Java employee object. Finally, we add the employee object to the employee list. This process repeats for every employee record in the CSV file until all records are converted into employee objects and stored in employee list. Now let's go to next step, which is step 5. Step 5 is to create employee batch processor class. Create the class in com.batch package. In the class, first create a main method. After creating the main method, read all the list of employee objects by using employee CSV reader class of read method. So here declare throws exception to handle the exception. Import list. I can call the method by using the class name because it is static. After this, create database connection. After creating connection, we need to write an insert query. And to run that insert query in database, we need a prepared statement. Let's create all of them. Query and prepared statement is ready. If you have a look at the query, it is insert into employees table, ID, name, email, and designation, followed by question marks. So we have to set these question marks by using PS variable. And we will set a batch of 500 queries to the prepared statement by using add batch method. And to count number of queries, we need a variable called integer count. I will initialize it with 0. After this, I will print a message, batch processing started. Here I will use for each loop to iterate through all objects of employee. When for loop starts, one employee object will come at a time inside the for loop and set them to the prepared statement by using setter methods. So here first we need to set ps dot set int because ID is integer type. And we are setting it to the first column index. And the value we are setting is employee dot, we have to use getter method get ID. So one ID value from employee object will come and store in the first index value, which is ID. After that, we have to set name, email, and designation similarly by using setString methods. After this line, our 4 values will be set into our query. and our query is ready for execution now. Instead of executing it in database, we will add it to the batch. Just write ps.add_batch. So this record will be added to batch, and here increase the count. Here we will write a if condition. If count percentile 500 is equal to 0, what we will do is ps.execute batch. After this line, we will print inserted plus count records. Watch the video until the end. I will show the execution flow using animations, and you will get to know what is happening in the loop. Don't miss it. Let's understand this loop. When the for loop starts, first employee will come inside and it will be stored into our prepared statement, and it will be added to batch, and at the time count will be 1, and 1 percentile 500 is not 0. So the loop will continue. Second record will be added to batch and count value will be 2, and like that the employee records will be added to batch until count value will become 500. Once count value is 500, 500 percentile 500, the result is 0. So the condition will become true. So the batch will be executed, which means 500 records will be taken to the database and they will execute there, and this will print inserted 500 records because count value will be 500, and loop will continue to add more records to batch, and once the count value will become 1000, again the percentile value will become 1000 percentile 500, it is 0 again. Here that 500 to 1000 batch will be executed again, and this time count value will be 1000, inserted 1000 records will be printed. Likewise, all the employees records will be added to batch and executed in the database, and this will print inserted 1500 2000 records. Now after this loop, we have to print all records are executed, all records are inserted. Before that, we have to close both prepared statement and connection. Let's understand the execution flow of the employee batch processor class. First, we read all employee objects from the CSV file using the read method of the employee CSV reader class. Next, we create a database connection and create a prepared statement with insert query. Then we create a count variable to track the batch size and start a for loop to process one employee object at a time. During each iteration, we get one employee values using getter methods, and we set them into the prepared statement using setter methods, and add the query to the batch and increment the count by 1. Initially, the condition count percentile 500 equal to 0 is false. So the loop continues adding queries to the batch. When count reaches 500, the condition becomes true, and execute batch sends all 500 queries to the database in single operation. The batch is then cleared and inserted 500 records is printed. The same process repeats when count reaches 1000, 1500 and 2000. Finally, after all employee objects are processed, the loop ends, resources are closed, and the message all records inserted is printed. Now our program is ready for the execution. So let's open our database and see the table is ready or not. If you can look at our employee table, currently we don't have any data. Okay, let's run our program. So here we got an error, no suitable driver found. So we forget to add the driver. Let's add MySQL driver to the class path. I will add MySQL connector 8.3 jar, apply and close. If you can look at, batch processing started, inserted 500, 1000, 1500, 2000 records, and all records are inserted. Now let's go to our MySQL If I run the select query again, it will print all the 2000 records in the table. You can see all the values are in the database now. In database, when you run a select query, the confusion is it will select only first 1000 records. You can see it is selecting only first 1000 records after it is showing null. But the database limit is to show only 1000 records, and there are 2000 records in table. So if we select count from employees and run this query, so here the count is 2000. And we will also do one thing, select star from employees where id is equal to 1651. Let's run this query. So here it is employees, not employee. So here you can see this is id 1652, name, email and designation. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much for watching batch processing. And next I'm gonna start Servlet series. If you are interested, keep watching Servlet and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.